Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next installment in the 2020 to 2023 World Federation of Music Therapy Research and Ethics Research Forum video series. I'm very pleased today to be joined by Bhuvaneswari Ramesh from Pondicherry, India. She is a PhD candidate, and as you all know me, I'm Amy Clements-Cortez, the current Research and Ethics Chair for the World Federation. So please join me in welcoming Bhuvana. Bhuvana, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself to get started?
Yeah, hi, Amy. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about the research I've done and what I look forward to it. I'm Bhuvaneswari Ramesh. I have a master's in medical music therapy from India, and I'm right now doing my PhD in music therapy. Last stages of it. I started way back in 2017, but due to COVID and other reasons, it's been a little delayed. My work has broadly been within a medical university. It's a healthcare university where I get to work majorly with a lot of patients within a hospital. Apart from that, I have worked with different kinds of patients like departments of obstetrics and gynecology, pediatrics, procedural support like endoscopy, cath lab, hemodialysis, pediatrics, neonates. I don't know, it's just a wide variety, a wide range of populations. Apart from that, I've also have experiences with community work. So I have a bit of work done with transgenders, then with geriatric population, children with autism. So it's basically been a very wide range of experiences. And right now, I do a lot of teaching. We have 3 batches of masters in medical music therapy students. Apart from that, I also help them through research and supervising their clinical work. Yeah, so that's basically what I do right now.
Bhuvana, it sounds like you have a lot of free time with all of that work. Oh my goodness. You
Yeah,
are.
and I have also been connected with WFMT since 2014. So I was also a student delegate then, and now actively a regional liaison for Southeast Asia. So it's been a lot of work, a lot of understanding, learning, sharing, and I think I'm learning a lot from the whole global perspectives as well. So that's one thing I left out.
Yes, you are doing many, many things. And my goodness, you have an amazing amount of experience across the lifespan. I wonder if you could tell us, I've read a little bit about some of your research, but could you maybe tell us about a couple of research projects that you've worked on or are working on?
Like I actually said before, my work basically is based within a hospital majorly. And whether I liked it or did not plan on it, since 2014, when I was doing my postgraduate diploma course, I've gotten into obstetrics and gynecology. So I have quite a bit of experience in prenatal, perinatal, as well as postnatal pregnant women, and also with infants in NICU and after birth with normal deliveries. So I have at least 5 publications in that area. So I started out with the pre-hypertensive pregnant women. So that's basically a very unstable area of hypertension. You know, we all know how hypertension can have a very severe effect on the baby and the mother, which ends up with preeclampsia and may also have brain damage for the child and stuff like that. So my understanding of that was, at the beginning, I didn't know much about prehypertension, but if it is being caught way back in the first trimester, we can reduce a lot of children having brain damage or women getting into a preeclampsia. So music played a very important role of keeping them stable and emotionally regulated. So that was my first study, which I did when I didn't know much about research. And then when I did my master's, I actually did 2 studies. One was for a faculty study and one for my master's. Both of them were, one of them was during labor process. So I worked with the traditional aspects of culture-based chants along with music during the second stage of labor. So basically what I used to do was During the contractions of labor, I was using shallow breathing. And between the contractions, I would do singing and chanting along with them so that they're actively participating and they can manage their pain. And it was very positive because they felt like there's a lot of support and empathy from another person who's not really a doctor or a nurse, who do not have a time to spend with them and to make them feel better. Also, being in a hospital where they have to stay for 8-10 hours with no family members, music therapists play a very important role there. So, apart from understanding pain management and others, I also found how supportive we can be in that area. Then the master's study was on postnatal lactation. So I did maternal breastfeeding satisfaction levels, and I also understood how preferred music would allow them to be comfortable with lactating. So that was also very. It was also new study for us here, though there are a lot of other studies across the globe. Mostly, if you see in China and other areas, a lot of studies of pregnancy. In India, it is a very new study, and for me, I found it to be with logistics and all that, it is quite difficult. It was a follow-up study. So I had to do 2 sessions a day for 3 days. And the session started during labor. So it was like a section of having 100, it was a randomized control trial. So I had to do with 50 women in control and 50 women in interventions. And I had a follow-up at 45 days when they came in for immunization to understand how home-based music would work. So that was quite a difficult study, and it was nerve wracking. I actually did 200 women to complete 98. So that was another very good experience, and I understood how difficult it is to do follow up studies. So that was one. And now for my PhD, I think from understanding from maternal perception of how lactation is, and from the various studies that have showed that lactation is improves with music. There are a lot of studies in NICU where they have understood how for prenatal infants and for the mothers, the lactation levels have been found to be um, improve or increase with music. But there are no scientific evidence or any biomarkers or anything that actually from which we could understand. I think there was one study in the 1980s or 90s where they understood there were sparks of oxytocin when music was played in certain aspects. Apart from that, I don't think I found anything with lactation. So my study is based on biomarkers of oxytocin and prolactin. And in prolactin, there are no absolutely very, I couldn't find any studies. And we took an other parameter for stress. Normally, stress, they would take up cortisol because cortisol is easily understandable as in the change in stress. And when you look at the whole mechanism of stress, cortisol is almost supposed to be the stress hormone. But what I have taken is called the oxidative stress, which is a bit uh, which also works with muscle pain and pathologically has an effect on all human beings when we are very stressed out. But during labor, apparently the oxidative stress levels are very high in normal deliveries. So I'm trying to see if there can be any change or any response with music based on oxidative stress. So we know oxytocin is very important for regular delivery, for lactation to happen, and for anything that needs to work smoothly, the human body, oxytocin is important. And we have also a lot of research talking about how music can allow reduce stress levels, improve cortisol, reduce cortisol and increase oxytocin. So in the whole process, I understood the mechanism of labor and that we cannot reduce pain or remove pain. We can only manage pain in labor because that is pain that is necessary, and the lactation and everything that happens later, that can have an effect from the process of pregnancy and labor. So it has been quite a lot of experience. I'm hoping that and the funding is very difficult here. So as of now, my whole PhD has been funded by myself. So I'm hoping that these parameters will be something new to the world that I can give. And whatever I learn, whether it's positive or there's no change, or even if there's a negative effect, that's something that is new for us to learn. So one thing that I'm positive is whatever is the outcome is going to be new. So that's, I think, one major part is we have a lot of research in neurological areas. We have MRIs and fMRIs and EEGs and ECGs, but biomarkers, medical biomarkers of the biological areas, the biomedical areas are very less. So I think this can be one of the major areas that can allow us to understand how music works internally. So yeah, that's basically a major part of my research, but I have also had some experience in most other research areas. But this is close to my heart, not because I chose it, but it chose me, I guess. So
And thank you so much. That was such a thorough recap. And this is not my area of research or expertise at all. I'm very focused in dementia, but I can't say that I've seen many. I can't say that I've seen research in this area. So I truly do think that you've found the gap. And even with the work that you've already published, it really is contributing so much to our music therapy data and knowledge base. Could you tell us, you touched on it a little bit, but perhaps maybe just how your research compares with that's perhaps also taking place in your part of the globe, or any other research that you are aware of that is related to yours, or is perhaps influenced your research in any way?
honestly, to speak, in the area that this part of the globe, South Asia or Southeast Asia, the research aspects are very less. One thing is because education in music therapy is very sparse. Only 4 countries or all the Southeast Asian countries has a music therapy program at all. And I think I got lucky being in a medical university which focuses and allows us to do a lot of research. So I get to do it. But I think most of the other countries are still very majorly doing on small scale case reports or case studies. But like I did say, the studies that I found, even within the Indian context, are done by doctors or musicians who understand that it has a music therapy aspect. So there is, I think, related, very similar to the kind of biomarkers that I spoke about was oxytocin, by one doctor, some place in South India. She actually found that there was a lot of increase in oxytocin by using ragas. So she has apparently compared a raga or two ragas, I think, just as receptive method of just listening to music with no therapist, but just listening. So I think that is one major area where I can talk about, and that is another major uh, difference I find, because when they're doctors, their ability to focus on biomarkers and other areas of research becomes easier. And for music therapists, it's been quite difficult to get funding or to be able to do research on a high level, or because till the study that I'm doing right now, all of them have been non-financial. That is, they've all been scales or maternal perceptions. And that is exactly what like I said, China, I think, is the major number of studies I found in pregnancy and lactation. But there are studies around the globe. I think in Europe or Australia, I think there's a lot of studies in NICU. And when it comes to infants in NICU, I think lactation plays a very important role. So I have found that there's a lot of studies there, but still biomedical research is very less. That is one major difference that I'm seeing. There are studies with, I think they've used a lot with the weight of milk or the weight of the baby. Now there's another ethical issue of pumping milk to see the difference in milk lactation. So that's another problem where we can't really understand. So there are a lot of these loopholes and issues that causes the difference in the way we do research. So that's one major thing. And one more difference in the work we do is we are looking at bringing in traditional healing systems. Now, for example, the place where we have a lot of cultural ways of taking care of pregnant women. So we believe that breastfeeding is very holistic, it's very spiritual, and there are foods that are given to the parents. But there's a lot of history about how music has an effect on babies. It's called Garbh Sanskar. Garbh Sanskar means to teach the child in the womb, right? I'm sure you would have heard of these terms. May it's possible it's going circling around. Uh, I hope it is, but basically it means you're teaching the child from within, and this has been happening for thousands of years. For example, in the Vedic periods itself, they had chants, right? Like just intonations of sounds. They were supposed to be very good for a pregnant woman past the 6 months. So we normally have these glass bangles that are worn, and they sing a lot, and they're made sure that they don't listen to bad things or go into violent spaces, or they don't get scared or anything of those sort. Anything negative, they were supposed to be kept away from. And there was a lot of singing, there was a lot of talking, there was a lot of dramas that they used to see and learn from. And basically, if you know, in the Indian context or even the South Asian context, it's very spiritual. Everything is connected to God. Everything is connected to religion. So it's all about hope. It's all about saying that I need God should take care of me. There's a lot to do with faith and culture. So here in the Indian context, I have tried to bridge the traditional aspects of chanting and singing, bringing in there's a temple in South India, down south. It's called Garbha Rakshambigai temple. That means that goddess would take care of a pregnant woman. So there is a temple specifically for this, and there are lots of these chants and slokas, like couplets and four-line slokas, that are specifically written for pregnant women. So we have a lot of those things. So in traditional healing systems, we look at a child as everything. If you everybody will come in to take care of the child. The grandmother sings songs. Here it's a major thing that the grandmother has to sing lullabies to the children, and there is this bonding with the family. So the idea is to give a wholesome experience to the mother. So we one of the studies that I did was a faculty study where I started using all of these techniques of breathing, chanting, chanting of slokas. Then we wrote a song in the cultural language Tamil. The language we speak here is Tamil, and so we wrote a Tamil song, a welcome song, and a secular song. Now you know India is very vastly different. We have about 29 different states and 100 and more than 100 different languages and more dialects, right? We have hundreds of dialects. So we have to be very careful that we specifically use that language to get across to that family or the pregnant woman. So this is one of the studies that I did from the 4th month to the 10th month until they delivered. And we found that it had a very good effect during labor, where they learned how to do breathing. Because you know how when they're in labor, they're supposed to breathe in and push. So it really helps because they've started working on all of these things, and it keeps them focused. And they also have said with chanting and with playing of instruments like metallic instruments actually helps the movement of the child. So even with chanting, it is just about intonations. If I may chant something, it Yehi Bhagavan Brahman Prajakarta Prajapate. This is 2 lines, and the whole chant would go on in the same manner. So now if you see, it is repetitive and it has intonations. It doesn't have a melody, but it still has a movement. And that when you say it from through your mouth, that the vibrations that the mother hears keeps them focused, and there's a movement in the child. So the fetal movements of the mother's maternal perception plays a very important role. So I think all of these things are a very unique part where I am in. I haven't seen many number of studies based on these in any part of the country or the world. But there are studies, mostly there are receptive studies. From what I have found, there are no real music therapy studies as such. There are mostly receptive studies where they just play music in the background, or there is no real information also in the articles as to how they did it, how they came across the music, how did they administer the music, how did they understand how to use it with the patient. So they just played music. So, and I think that is why we in India are, or anywhere in the world, we are trying to make specific studies with music therapy to show the difference. So I think these are the different things that research, we have done research here, and I think it's very important to look at how we do music therapy. And yeah, I guess creating evidence is important.
So you made some excellent points in terms of sharing about how in many studies that we read, music is described, or music isn't described, rather, music is shared that it was the intervention or it was used, but we don't actually have more details about what kind of music, like you said, or how it was decided upon. So then it's hard to understand what about that music might have had an impact. So wonderful that you're focusing on that. And I do think that by being clear about that sort of thing, it does help people to understand more about what music therapy does and how it does differ from using music in procedural care or in support, which is also an important aspect of holistic care. I just find all your research is so interesting, indeed. So I'm very curious, why you've chosen this area and what motivates you and what inspired you to do this kind of research.
I may have mentioned this. It's a very funny thing, actually. When I started my internship, I was supposed to find an area to do my research to complete my degree. So at that point, I was very lost and clueless. So I worked in different areas. So the first thing that I came across was, okay, for a randomized control trial, I need a number of patients, and I find that the pregnancy ward is quite full. So that is where I actually started. And I find it quite funny that now, whether I liked it or not, I continue to do work with pregnant women and post pregnancy as well. But um, but honestly speaking, research is like an adrenal rush for me. Research motivates me and keeps me moving. But this area, like I said, it happened accidentally. So since then, I don't know for what reason I'm constantly working here. Even with my PhD, I actually started out with schizophrenia, but due to a lot of logistical issues, I had to change the study back into pregnancy, because majorly when you see in our country, with science and with medical backgrounds, people do not understand the qualitative parts of education or research. So it's very likely that randomized controls are taken more seriously than qualitative studies. So I majorly have done a lot of randomized control trials. All of them have been scientific studies using number of patients. So my first study, I had about 30 patients each, 30 subjects each. Like I said, it was on pre-hypertension. And then I went on to the next level of trying to work with labor pain. Um, and then I went on to doing postnatal maternal breastfeeding satisfactory levels, maternal perceptions, and preferred music. Um, and then the next thing was to come into my research and look on biomarkers. So I think um, for whatever reason, I have started out with a very simple aspect, and went on to doing different areas. And there's one very interesting study that one of my students is doing. It's during episiotomy. Okay, and I was very excited because, unfortunately or fortunately, during all of these years in working in labor and postnatal ward, I never came across episiotomy. And apparently, there's only one study that in China, I think, which they have done it. Episiotomy is the repair after the delivery of normal delivery. They do a slight stitch because after the baby is born, the vaginal cervix is slightly parked. So they actually do a small surgical procedure. It takes about 10-15 minutes. And apparently, because it's a vulnerable part of the body, it's very painful. Even though they give it sedatives, they still have pain and discomfort. And one of my students is actually working with trying to do singing and humming along with the subjects during episiotomy. So it is also one of the very interesting studies that's coming up. So I think for whatever reason, this area of work has become like a focus in my major research area, and I love doing it. Another thing that I also understand is there are not many studies with women, or I've also come across a couple of different areas that are not being looked at. One is PCOD, and another is menstruation and menopause, where we go through a lot, but it has not been tapped on. Um, there was another study that we started, but because of patient movement, we weren't able to do it. It's also on women who have had abortions, which is one of the most traumatic experience that we can go through. So yeah, looking at the major pregnancy part, there's also other areas that are still ready to be tapped. So yeah, I think I don't know the motivation, but it's become like a focus of the work I do. Even if I do a postdoctoral, if chance gives me, I think I'll have to. I would look forward to doing more in this area, because even though there are a lot of studies, I find that it is still not very clear, and it's still not aware. People are still not aware how music can really play a role in pregnancy, perinatal or postnatal, because there's so much potential, and there's immediate outcomes. For example, when I see my students going in for clinical practice, and when I went, because when I was delivering my baby, I thinking of someone coming and holding my hand and singing was out of question. But I found that it actually has a lot of effect on people. I can see that they feel the body when they're listening to music. When they're pregnant, they can feel the child inside the body, the infant inside the body, and that is the expressions and the experiences that these ladies give me is something that I don't know how to express, because it's something that comes out of emotions. And there have been a lot of women who still keep in touch with me after my studies, because I've had these follow-up studies. They still call me up and say, my child is not well. Can I come and see you? So there's a lasting number of things that I can talk about. But yeah, I think that's what keeps me motivated. The connections with the patients, the subjects, um, the effects I can see on them, the outcomes that I can look forward to, and the changes that we can document and create evidence for, for the future, for the community. I think that's just motivating enough for me at the moment.
It sounds amazing. I was going to ask you, I mean, it must be so intimate to be with these women during these very, vulnerable times when they are experiencing pain. And I would imagine the connection that they do feel, and how wonderful for the baby as well to be welcomed with music, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. It's been really amazing. In fact, if it's okay and we have time, I have one of these instances, um, where the doctors actually called me and said, this was like 4 or 5 years ago, not even recent. Uh, when they said this lady is very agitated, and she was literally just walking up the bed and going out. When her baby was actually coming out, she couldn't handle the pain. You know how the pain is. It's quite excruciating, right? There's no number you can put in a numerical scale. And she was extremely agitated, and they said, just do something, because the doctors didn't have the patience. They were getting angry and irritated and frustrated. Everybody is tired. So I learned a lot from that experience, where I could just say, okay, I understand you're agitated, but just hold my hand for a minute, breathe along with me. And then I could make her sit in the next 5 minutes. And then she was wheeled into the labor ward. She kept holding on to my hand throughout. And she kept holding my hand tight. And I just had to keep humming and breathing along with her. And she delivered the baby within the next half an hour. So there is only one or two experiences like this, but it really made an impact on me to know that the support that we can be. I feel like we are the linchpin between the medical personnel and the patient, where the medical interdisciplinary team do not have that much time to actually be emotionally connected to the patient, but we as a third person can actually be there to hold their hands and say, I'm there for you. And that support really works even in that kind of an excruciatingly painful, uh, for me, I understand it as almost being in so much pain you don't know where you are. And if we can even make a small impact in that area, I think, um, that's a major. I don't need to write a research paper on that. It is something that I cannot document with numbers, and it's something that I relish to. These are things that really keep me moving. So yeah,
Yeah,
that was an
amazing.
experience.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that experience. I mean, we debate a lot about, the kinds of research that we need and the numbers, the quantitative research versus the qualitative. And there's so much value in both kinds. Because in the qualitative, like this beautiful case that you presented, right? Like you're sharing what that experience is like from your perspective, right? Much more things that you're observing that aren't quantifiable. So I do hope that you will also continue to write and publish as you have recently done in the Journal of Music and Medicine. Encourage people to check out that as well. Was that the October 2022 edition?
Yes, it was the October edition. Yes, yes, and it really was. I was very, very happy because it's the first time it was really recognized, and I know that the paper was very different, and I really was able to work. I worked on it for quite a bit of time, but this could have never happened without my guide, who is a biochemistry professor. And without his inputs, I don't think I would have been able to put down all those structures of oxytocin and prolactin, because they are not as subjects we have ever learned. And chemistry was never my area of expertise. So I know it was an amalgamation of working along, and this is what I find very important and interesting, working in a medical hospital and in a university, which gives me this huge amount of learning, which we normally as music therapists think that we can't do, but with the amount of help we get from them, it's tremendous, and I'm very happy and thankful to him for having put all his in spite of him being the registrar of the university, he actually took out the time to help me through. So yeah, and I'm really happy that it came out in IAMM. I was truly surprised and happy. Thank you so much for that.
It's you've added a considerable piece to the body, so we should be thanking you, Bhuvana. And you raise another really important point, and we see a trend in research with interprofessional collaboration. So, not working independently, I mean, collaborating with others. And I think some of our strongest research does come when we have research teams that can see things from different perspectives, have different skill sets, like this individual that you worked with. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that perspective. So we're coming close to the end of our time. And I think I'd just like to ask you, why do you think that music therapy research is important? Or what do you tell your students about why music therapy research is important, or how to get them started or inspired?
Ah, okay, first to answer why I think research is important. Uh, Honestly, when I started, I didn't know anything about research, and I didn't understand why research. I was extremely scared of the analysis and the statistical parts. But more and more that I do, and all I understand is, though there's such a huge body of knowledge in music therapy, still the awareness of the work we do is still not getting across. And the more and more evidence we create, that's going to bring the profession up, especially for countries like ours, which is still growing. And because technically people want evidence, and with just playing music, nobody seems to think there is a mechanism within the body that's causing a change, that's causing an improvement, that can reduce certain negative aspects and improve our lives, can work towards wellness, can be a part of every small thing that we do since the time, even before the time we are born, and even after we die. Still, people do not understand the importance of how music can work. Everybody I come across listens to music, sings along, they know it, that they listen to music when they can focus on their education, they can focus on driving, they can focus on cooking, and some of them have actually said, I cook much better with music on. So they all understand there is an effect on them, but they still do not want to take it as a way of therapeutic aspect which would make their lives better. Um, it's basically me and all of us creating awareness every day of our lives. I'm sure you do it yourself. Every time you meet a new client, we go on a spree of explaining and trying to put across how it can help them, though they have been listening to music all through their lives. So I think for us, research is a very important aspect because it brings out numbers, it brings out theories, it brings out emotions and feedback and photographs and videos, which is so important for music. So I think I bringing out this for us at this point, being in a healthcare university, um, brings it out, puts us out, saying that we are doing scientific work and not just singing a song and moving out. And for example, even without research, consistency. When you do research, it gives you a lot of structure. It brings in consistency and it brings about evidence and outcome, which is very important for scientific people or doctors or even rehabilitative centers. They want to know what is it that you will do at the end of whatever you do. So this is the first question that we get anywhere we go. Okay, so what can I expect out of the work you're doing? So then we need to show them evidence. So I think research is very important because of all of these aspects. But the majorly, I think for students, they need to get through the basic educational part. And then when they start looking at things for the future, that is when we can actually talk about research to them. Um, a couple of them are self-motivated and they have their own thoughts. For example, a couple of my students have written papers. One of them was, like I said, a PCOS. She has been struggling with PCOS all her life, and she feels that. And when we wrote the review paper on PCOS, we found that there's only two papers in music therapy. One was a case report, and the other was not even much. There wasn't much about it as well. This one case report explained how music therapy can work with one person. So the idea that we can actually write about it and then try doing a study later. So for me, it is motivating them to first do and understand what has already been done in music therapy, then to focus on what they think can happen if they did something more to add to that literature. I think for some of them also, for them, I need to look at their own areas. For some of them, I find they can go a little bit into the emotional aspects and psychological aspects. Some of them I find are more very clearly number oriented. They understand more of pulmonary issues or breathing or HRV and physiological aspects. Some of them I find are comfortable just understanding the client and working along with them. So I find qualitative studies can work with them. And for some of them, I think just working with people is comfortable and their expressions that they can put into words. So I think I just don't tell them research, but I say it is good that you talk about what you feel and we write about what you want to do. So that can be published and that becomes research and someone would know your experiences. The first thing I've been telling them is about the Voices Journal, because I find that is where you can write about your experience more than your scientific literature. And that I think for music therapists is very important, that we talk about our emotions and our experiences, because nobody talks about us and the struggles we go through in our education and learning. So I think, and especially with students, I feel um, that we have to go searching for what other students do. But if we publish our experience of working through the theoretical part, then starting their clinical practice, how is it when they go into clinical practice? How is it after 6 months of clinical practice? What are their experiences and emotions? What are the changes in the way they think? For example, is one student of mine, he said, we had posted him into NICU, and for him, the first thing was, oh, babies, they're simply crying. There's no reason why they're crying. It's very irritating. This is exactly how he thought about it. But then after about a few weeks down the lane, he realized that there was a reason why they were crying. It wasn't personal towards him. So, and then he started slowly understanding and he started documenting it. And that was very important, that you change from a perspective and you understand what needs to be done based on the situation. So I think these changes are something that I'd always tell them to document. And probably someday they will be happy to present it or write about it. So this is how I look at research. It's scientific, very necessary for evidence-based creation. But for students, if you tell them that research is this way, you have to do this, you have to do that, and then they get a little scared, worried, oh my God, do I have to do so much? But if you, I think, take them through the process of what they like and then say that this can be taken across to other people, that would motivate them more. I hope I've answered that question.
You did
all over the
wonderfully.
place.
You sound like an amazing advocate for the profession. Thank you for sharing that. And I'd love to be a student in your class. You sound very inspirational. I do think that people stay connected to their research if they're passionate about it. So wonderful that you're inspiring that students to find their passion and then kind of giving them the practical steps. I want to thank you so much for being our speaker today and sharing all about your considerable wealth of research. Is there any last words you'd like to share with us?
I'm really thankful for this opportunity for me to talk about my research. I have actually started loving it so much. Like I said, it's an adrenaline rush. I literally call research as a pregnancy. So being so much of work that I've done in pregnancy and labor, I call research a process of pregnancy, and when the publication comes out, that's the baby. So I love doing research, and I hope that whatever I've shared today can be of use, and I hope I have shared and brought out some light from research perspectives in the area that we are in. And I hope that we can do more and do collaborative work with other places. And one more major thing is I'm trying to foray into qualitative studies because I've done so much. I have done quite a bit of randomized controlled trials, and qualitative studies are very important for us because that's where we can see the change happening over a period of time. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and yeah.
Thank you again. And I hope that you will stay tuned for our next video. And thank you again for your time today. Bye-bye.